Welcome back, everybody, to Evolution versus Creation, and this is going to be my last video, and it's video number 10. I hope you guys have enjoyed this series and have had the patience to watch all of them. I know it's a lot of content, a lot of information, but I hope you have found it helpful in just getting a bit of a better grip on evolution versus creation. And so in this last video, I'm going to go through animals that defy evolution. So we're just going to look at a number of different creatures that their evolution is simply impossible because of what we see in their biology, and they need to be exactly the way that they are from the very beginning. Otherwise, they wouldn't be around today if they had to slowly evolve into what we see today. And so I'm going to elaborate on some of these animals, and then I'm also just going to wrap up and share a few quotes with you guys from some really brilliant scientists, both evolutionists and non-evolutionists, and just wrap up with a conclusion. And that's going to be the end of these videos. And so anyway, without further ado, we'll get into these animals. First off, though, I want to share these two verses again. I know I've done this before, but it just fits so well into this video. And so Job, again, just tells us, as he says, "But ask the animals, and they will teach you, or the birds in the sky, and they will tell you, or speak to the earth, and it will teach you, or let the fish of the sea inform you. For which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this?" Or another translation says that the hand of the Lord has made this. The animals will teach you, the fish will teach you, the birds will tell you that God has made these things. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that we are without excuse. And again, the Bible is just saying it, guys. We just have to look around at creation, and we see the fingerprints of a creator everywhere we look. And creation itself will teach us these things. And so with that in mind, let's take a look at a few of the creatures that the Lord has made that we can learn from. So number one is the giraffe. And these guys, as you know, are big animals. A big bull giraffe, a male giraffe, is up to 18 feet tall. And because they're so tall and because they have such a long, skinny neck, it requires a 2.5-foot heart, which is a pump, that pumps the blood all the way up that long, skinny neck in order to get enough blood and oxygenated blood into its brain. And so it's also having to work against gravity in order to do this when his head is up. And so it requires this really big heart, or this really big pump, in order to get this all that blood up that long, skinny neck going against gravity. And so he has this amazing heart that can do the job no problem. However, there is a problem when the giraffe puts his head down. And so the issue is that the pump is no longer working against gravity, it's working with gravity. And so this giraffe goes to put his head down to get a drink of water. The heart gives a big squeeze to pump the blood to its neck, and now the blood rushes down the neck and explodes his brains. Literally, the giraffe should have its brains blown out every time it goes to have a drink of water because of the amount of blood that is being pumped into its head. And so, now that this giraffe is laying there dying and his brains are exploding, he must be thinking to himself, how am I going to evolve this so that I don't blow my brains out every time I need a drink of water? And, it's of course silly because, as we know, dead things don't evolve. And so I'm not too sure how the giraffe figured out that he's got to fix this problem since he was already dead and had no ability to fix the problem. But that's what evolutionists believe. And so what we find in the giraffe that solves this problem is amazing. And also it had to be there from the beginning. But it doesn't blow its brains out because there are little valves that are built into his neck artery from his heart that close one by one as his head drops. And you can kind of see that on the right-hand side, that red artery there. There's little valves that are built into that. Those arteries, they close one by one to control the blood flow as the giraffe drops his head. And also there's another little pump at the end of the valves that pump the blood underneath its brain into a built-in sponge. Giraffes are unique in this, in that they have a little sponge underneath their brain that blood gets pumped into, and it slowly expands so as not just to rush to its brain and explode its brain. The valves slowly close one by one, and then the remaining blood that is there doesn't just rush into the brain, it goes into a sponge that gently expands and fills. But the giraffe has another problem. So when he puts his head down, this is taken care of with the valves that close one by one in the sponge. But it has another problem when it goes to put its head up again. So let's say all of a sudden a lion is coming and he's having this drink of water, and he's got to put his head up really quick, and he's got to start running away, but he runs about 5 steps and then he totally passes out because there's not enough oxygen in his brain. And you might notice this happens to you guys sometimes. If you are sitting on a couch or something, and then you go to stand up, and then you all of a sudden feel like a little bit dizzy, or like you might pass out. Well, is exactly what would be happening with this giraffe on a larger scale, because of the oxygenated blood that needs to be getting to his brain very, very quickly. And while the lion is eating him because he's passed out, he must be thinking to himself, how the heck do I evolve this? And because if I don't, I'm going to go extinct. And the giraffe should be extinct because he should have never made it this far, because that had to be there from the beginning. There has to be something in his body from the very beginning that deals with this problem. And so we, of course, know that when the giraffe gets up and runs, he doesn't pass out. And the reason for that is the little valves in the artery open, the ones I showed you, open, and the sponge under the brain gently squeezes the last little bit of oxygenated blood up into his brain, and then the little veins that go down the neck close. And by the time he's up and running, his blood pressure is fine, and he's good to go. And so this giraffe has this amazing built-in system that, again, had to be there from the very beginning, that deal with the blood flow to his brain, and that little built-in sponge, and then the little valves, the artery that close one by one when he puts his head down, and then reopen one by one when he puts it back up again, all just built in there from the very beginning. And if he didn't have those things, we would never see the giraffe around today, because it would be extinct. It would have died a long time ago. These things have to be there from the beginning and could not have evolved. Next one we're going to look at is the woodpecker. Now look at this guy. Isn't it awesome? It's like, who says God doesn't like red mohawks? I think God likes red mohawks. He gave this woodpecker a good one. But again, here's another example of incredible design in this woodpecker. The beak of a woodpecker is like its industrial strength, and it is stronger than any other bird's beak. And so the woodpecker is very unique in the bird family. If you look on the left here, that's a more regular bird. There's a lot of birds that have that kind of foot where there's 3 toes coming out the front and 1 going out the back. Whereas the woodpecker has 2 toes going out the front and 2 toes going out the back. And this is what gives him the ability to attach to these vertical tree trunks, and he can go upside down, right side up, sideways, angled, in any direction, doesn't matter, because of how his foot is designed. That's how he can scurry up and down the trunk of a tree going every which way, whereas a lot of other birds, they can't do that. And that's because his foot has been designed to be completely different and able to do that, so he can peck at the wood and get to the insects that he needs to eat. Next kind of neat thing about the woodpecker is that their feathers are much stronger and more resilient than most other feathers when it comes to his tail. And he uses these along with his feet to tripod himself when he's pecking into a tree, his tail feathers. So on the left-hand side, you can see what his tail normally looks like. And then on the right, you can see when he's pecking into something, he fans it out and it almost acts like a tripod, and he just goes and pecks away while he's fanning out his tail feathers to help him to do that. And so they also have a really specially designed tail and the feathers within that tail to be able to do that. And so you might have wondered this before. I know that I sure did. It's like, how is it that the woodpecker doesn't go home every day with a splitting headache? I mean, he is literally smashing his face into a very hard object all day long. So how is it that he doesn't get brain damage or at least go home with a throbbing headache every single day. And the reason he doesn't is because the woodpecker has a number of amazing built-in factories within its head. So he has a little piece of cartilage in between his skull and his beak that acts as a shock absorber. And you can see it there. It's like a little sponge-like thing. It's tiny, but it works as an amazing shock absorber. And his skull is the thickest bone per body weight of any creature on the planet. Brain surgeons have actually studied woodpeckers to learn more about how to treat brain trauma victims. And they've learned from the woodpecker. It's kind of like going back to Job. Look to the birds and they will teach you. And brain surgeons have looked to the birds and they have taught them. And the design also of the beak makes it so that when the woodpecker is pecking into a piece of wood, it slices into the wood versus just smashing it. It's designed to cut. And if you also look at the muscle that pushes the back of the jaw forward, the upper beak shifts upwards, absorbing the impact of the hit. And so everywhere you just look on this little head of this amazing bird, it has been built to be able to peck into wood and to do that without causing any damage or issues within its body. And again, it needs that from the very beginning. And so their whole head is designed to do exactly what they do. Another cool thing is, when you think about how fast a woodpecker pecks, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood, right? It makes you think of that riddle. I actually don't know what a woodchuck is. I don't think it's a woodpecker. I can't remember. Anyway, we're on woodpeckers. So woodpeckers, they're going like crazy when they woodpeck. They're like, and they're going so fast. But the amazing thing is that every time that woodpecker puts back its head before he pecks, he actually opens his eyes, aims at where he's going to peck, and then goes and smashes the tree with his beak. And so it's within like milliseconds every single time he's opening his eyes, aiming, and then checking. And then before he hits, he closes his eyes. And he does this because if he didn't, his eyes would literally pop out of his skull. He hits the tree so hard. And so, you got to think like, man, why haven't there been these woodpeckers in the past who are eyeless? Right? If these woodpeckers evolved, it would have taken them time to figure out that their eyes pop out of their skulls every time they hit a tree. And so again, these birds would have died off. If evolution is true, they wouldn't have made it. There would have been all these eyeless birds trying to fly around, and they would have died. And so it's incredible because these birds are able to aim and close their eyes in between every single peck. And again, if they didn't, their eyes would pop out of their sockets. And so they just have this incredible ability that is there from the beginning. So you got to think that, now this woodpecker is pecked into this tree. He's got his hole. How is he going to get the bugs out of the tree? It's not enough that you can just peck a hole into the tree. You got to also figure out a way to get out what's inside the tree, and you need a special tongue or something special in order to do that. And the woodpecker has a really unique tongue. In fact, I think it's kind of a creepy tongue because it's super long. And so most birds' tongue, they go right to the tip of the beak is what's normal for most birds. But the woodpecker's goes as far as 10 inches past his beak. And so, you can see it in the picture here. They have incredibly long tongues. And the question is, where the heck does that tongue go when it's not coming out of the bird's beak? Where does he store that long thing? And again, we see just brilliant design here. The tongue literally goes up and around the skull, and it sits right above where his eye is, as you can see in this picture here. And so it curves all the way around his skull and sits just above his eye. And so he's got this super long tongue that's basically stored within his skull. And now that he's got this really long tongue that he can get in there with, he also has a specially designed tongue that helps him to get the insects out. So the woodpecker has these little barbs that are on the end of its tongue that stabs the insect to help get them out of the hole that they pecked. But just in case that's not enough, they have a little built-in glue factory that makes the exact amount of glue that will stick to the bug but not stick to the woodpecker's beak. Once the bug is stuck to its tongue and he goes to swallow it, another little built-in factory dissolves the glue so he doesn't get his tongue stuck in his throat and choke to death when he swallows the bug. There is no other bird like the woodpecker. And so how could they have evolved, and what would they have evolved from? The woodpecker is completely unique in the bird family. There's nothing like it. And so they don't have a clue what he would have come from, what he would have evolved from if evolution was true. And again, all these little factories are built into it from the beginning, making their evolution impossible. The little glue factories, the barbed tongue, the cartilage that's built into its head, so he can have a shock absorber, the industrial strength beak, the ability to close his eyes that quickly and aim. All of these things have to be present at the exact same time. Otherwise, this bird is dead. And so again, we see just a beautiful bird here that defies evolution. Now, I also just had to include songbirds because, I mean, come on. Have you ever really listened closely to songbirds? If you do, you'll realize that they are extremely skillful musicians. Songbirds are incredible. When they sing, you can hear melody, you can hear harmony and rhythm. And they're just beautiful. And also, guys, like, look at the colors of these things. Come on. I mean, that is a painter that is just showing off. God has brilliantly painted these birds, and he's done it because he loves beauty. It's not that there's something that helps these birds survive because of the colors that are on them. If evolution's true, these colors serve absolutely no purpose as far as their survival goes. In fact, they might even be easier to see when it comes to being seen by a predator. No, they're made this way because of beauty. There's absolutely nothing to do with survival. It's just all to do with beauty. And they can sing. And a lot of birds can sing in absolute pitch. And so that is that they can sing, if they sing in, let's say, a G note, and they'll perfectly hit that G note. And then the next day, again, they'll perfectly hit that G note. Their consistency is incredible, and their pitch is amazing. Male blackbirds, for example, have been observed to sing in matched counter-singing, which is when each blackbird takes turns singing a tune back to another bird. And so it's called matched counter-singing. And some birds even use a variation of notes within a theme. And so these birds have, their understanding of music and pitch is incredible. And when human musicians attempt to do matched counter-singing, it requires planning, and it requires talent, practice, and design. And yet these birds have it built into their nature and into their instinct. They know how to do that. We got to practice to figure out how to do that. These birds already have it. Nobody taught them. It's already in their understanding. As for these little birds go, they already understand music and rhythm and harmony. And it's just built into them. It's amazing. Some birds even sing duets, like the African robin here pictured on the left. And he'll sing with another bird, and they'll alternate their notes within a song. And it's just amazing to hear them go back and forth. You can look them up on YouTube and listen to them. They're amazing. And to execute this kind of duet requires split-second timing. They are incredibly talented musicians, these little African robins. And if you look on the right, you'll see hermit thrushes have been found to sing all the notes within the pentatonic scale. These little musicians can just crush all the notes. They're incredibly talented. And other birds can sing two notes at the exact same time because of the position of their voice boxes buried within their chest. And so scientists have actually looked into this, and we still don't fully understand the bird box. We don't fully understand the little voice box that it has within its chest, how it is able to do what it does. It's still a little bit of a mystery. And again, just seeing the design within them is beautiful, and so much so that both Mozart and Beethoven recognized birds' musical abilities and borrowed bird songs as inspiration for some of their music. So some of the most talented musicians we've seen noticed birds' ability to be musicians and actually learned from them. Just like Job says, look to the birds, they'll tell you. And both Mozart and Beethoven did that, and that inspired them. And so bird songs show evidence of structure and beauty. If evolution was true and songs evolved by accident or by chance, then at least half the songs should be grating, irritating, and nonsensical. Yet we do not hear that in nature. The worldwide morning songs of birds is known as the dawn chorus, which is welcoming a new day. This is so widely known across the earth, they actually came up with a name for it, that there's this amazing thing these songbirds do. As soon as the sun is rising, right at dawn, they just start belting it out. And it's known as the dawn chorus. It's like they're worshiping the Lord as the sun comes up. It's like they're singing and giving praise as a new day is dawning. Bird songs are beautiful. And if you take the time to listen, what Jesus, who is the greatest composer of all, if you take time to listen to what he's saying and has composed for our pleasure, you will see Psalm 150 verse 6 that says, "Let everything that hath breath praise the Lord." And you will see that that's exactly what's taking place. These little birds that have breath are praising the Lord. And Jesus, the master composer, has put this on display for us each and every day to see the beauty of his creation in songbirds. And I just think they're amazing, amazing little animals that we just totally get to enjoy music from. Absolutely unnecessary for their survival, but totally necessary if there's a beautiful creator who loves song and loves music. And I also just had to throw some of these pictures in, guys, because I mean, come on, look at them. Look at these birds. Look at their beauty. Look at their color. You're telling me random chance and unguided processes produced this kind of beauty, this kind of artwork? Look at that Goldian finch in the middle there. Look at the colors on that thing. Look how beautifully that thing's painted. Or the secretary bird on the bottom left. Look at the eyelashes on that thing. Call it the secretary bird. Look how its face is painted. Or the mandarin duck in the middle at the bottom. It's incredible, guys. It's incredible. It's absolutely screams design and a creator. Just like you can't have a song without a composer, you can't have art without an artist. You cannot look at this and tell me that this is not art. And this is just a few of them. There are so many animals like this that are on beautiful display, that are pointing back to the most masterful artist of all time, which is the Lord himself. So moving on, I want to take a quick look at beavers and just share some really neat things about these guys. They're one of those funny animals that is a land animal, but it's more suited for water. And these beavers can actually hold their breath for up to 15 minutes, which is pretty impressive. But there's a number of interesting things about the beaver that I personally never knew until I looked into them. But their dams, for example, are so perfectly engineered that actual engineers have studied them to learn from their design in how to build stronger dams and how to better channel water, or how to channel water more efficiently. And it's almost like God has given us examples in nature to teach us how to do things the right way. And believers and unbelievers alike learn and have benefited from this. Again, look to the animals. They'll teach you. Well, engineers have done that with beavers, and we've learned a lot from their dams. And so the beaver builds his dam in such a way that bad gases can escape and good air can come in. It also stays completely dry as the inside is built just above the waterline. So most beavers live obviously where it's very cold, so they'll actually store food at the bottom of the river, lake, or pond for eating once it freezes over. And so they get their food and they just store it at the bottom of wherever body of water that they're on, and they have food all year round because of that. But their engineering of these dams is absolutely brilliant. Beavers also have what's called nectating eyelids, which are transparent. And so I couldn't find a picture of a beaver with this, but I found a picture of an eagle. And so it means that their eyelids are transparent. They can literally see through their eyes when their eyes are closed. And this is really important for a beaver because it spends so much time in water. It's constantly swimming around, and if its eyes were open, it could get mud, silt, or some other kind of debris into its eyes that would damage its eyes. And so it closes its eyes when it goes under the water, but because it has these nectating eyelids, it can see underwater just fine with his eyes closed. And so it's neat because these beavers literally have built-in goggles that they can do very well underwater with. The beaver can also carry large pieces of trees against currents by making mathematical calculations and then using their tail like a four-way rudder to overcome the drag when carrying large objects. So these beavers are constantly making these mathematical calculations as they're going about doing their daily work. And so it obviously uses the tail as well as a warning signal to other beavers by slapping it on the water when there's danger. So on land, they use their tail as a prop to give them balance and leverage when chomping down trees and carrying material. So their tails are very, very important to them. But what's neat about the beaver also is that the ears and nose also have built-in flaps that close when they go underwater, so that no water can get into their ears or into their nose. It's like their head is just full of these flaps that protect it. And most interesting to me, if you think about creation versus evolution, is there's a flap that covers its back molars. So the beaver obviously has these big front teeth that are insensitive and really strong, but its back molars are really sensitive. And so these animals live in cold water, and there's when they go into the water, there's another little flap that covers its back molar so that it doesn't have the cold water come and touch it and hurt it in some way or make it feel uncomfortable. And so the back flap for the molar is not something the beaver needs for survival, but rather for comfort. And so does this reveal an unneeded evolutionary trait, or simply the kindness of its creator? The back molar flap is the kindness of its creator. It's absolutely pointless in evolution. The only thing it does is provide comfort for the beaver. So beavers are also an amazing animal that, again, don't make sense if evolution is true. The next one we're going to look at is the Chocolate lizard, and this is another amazing creature that has built-in features that defy its evolution. And so this little guy lives in the desert, and he's got a blanket of skin on his back that can change colors, which is pretty cool. So in the morning, this lizard turns its skin black to absorb the heat from the sun. And he does this because he's cold-blooded. He's a cold-blooded animal, and he needs to warm up every morning so that he can move quickly for chasing prey or from running away from predators. And so he turns his skin black, absorbs the sun, gets his energy, and he's running off and good to go. But then in the afternoon, when the desert sun is hot, he turns his skin brown to reflect the sunlight so that he doesn't overheat. It also has a cool mechanism where if a coyote or something is after them, they'll run into a little rock crevice and they'll expand their bodies like a blowfish to make themselves very fat. And by doing this, the predator is unable to pull them out of the crevice that they have crawled into. And so one of the neatest things about this lizard, and why I chose to put him into this video, is because he has an incredible desalination factory that's built into him. And that simply means that he has an ability built into his body to get rid of salt. And so he gets in way more salt than he does water. And so his body is constantly building up this salt from eating plants and different insects. And he doesn't drink enough water to clean that out of his blood. And so that actually should kill him. There should be the salt should be building up so much that it totally takes him out. And if evolution is true and it's survival of the fittest, then this lizard would have built up too much salt and died out a long time ago. But the neat thing is that God has made this little creature with an amazing factory that's built into his nose. And so somehow, we still don't know how, but somehow he senses the salt building up in his blood, and then he diverts it through the factory that's built into his nose. And so the nose factory takes the salt out of the blood, purifying it. He's got this thing built into him. It draws all the salt out of the blood, and he diverts it when he knows there's too much salt building up. How he does that, again, we just don't know. But he diverts the salt from his blood into this factory within his nose. And when the salt builds up, he feels a sneeze coming on. And when it's finally time to release it, he lets her rip, man. And he literally sneezes out pure salt crystals. That is not snot or mucus. That is pure salt being blasted out of his nose. And so he might be the only animal that you might ask to sneeze on your food. And again, this is another incredibly designed animal that defies evolution. If that wasn't built into him from the very beginning, this animal would have died out long, long ago, and we would have had no idea that the Chocolate lizard ever existed at all. Next is this bird that I want to show you that is so bizarre and incredibly intelligent. It's the second last one that we're going to look at, and it's found in Australia. It's called the incubator bird, and it's also known as the mound builder, the incubator bird or the mound builder. And one of the male's jobs is to build the nest for the female, and the female's job is to come and inspect it and make sure that the nest that he built is good enough. And this is not an ordinary nest. These nests have been measured to be as much as 20 feet across and 50 feet high, sometimes digging down as much as 6 feet just to get started, this little bird. So this is also the reason why they're called mound builders, because their nests are so big. And so this male will be digging away, and the female will come and inspect the nest. And if she doesn't like it, then the male has to start all over again, and she'll come back after a few months to see if she likes what he's built. So another amazing thing about this bird is that it's only a 3 to 4 pounds. It's not a big bird. It's only a 3 to 4 pound bird, and yet the females lay a 1/2 pound egg every 3 days for 7 months. A 1/2 pound egg every 3 days for 7 months coming out of a 3 to 4 pound bird, which is why the female is probably thinking, hey, if I'm pushing one of these out of my body every 3 days for the next 7 months, you're taking care of the nest and you're taking care of the chicks when they do come. That's exactly what happens. The female's job is literally to lay the eggs, and that's it. When she's done laying eggs, she is out. And so what's neat about the eggs that she does lay is that the eggshell has these upside down cones that are built into it. And so the chick grows, it needs more air. And so it takes its beak and begins to shave off the inside layer of the shell, moving up the cone and thereby getting more air until it finally breaks out of the shell. And so it's scraping the inside of the shell, and as it does, these cones are getting scraped from the bottom up, and they're letting in more air as the chick needs it, and as it's growing until obviously it finally breaks out. So when the female is done laying the eggs, she leaves, as I said, and the male now has to take care of the chicks and the nest. What's incredible about this is that the male has to keep the inside of the nest at exactly, I kid you not, exactly 91 degrees Fahrenheit for 7 months. This bird has to keep the exact right temperature. If the nest varies much more than a single degree, either way, up or down, the chicks will die. So every day he digs down and checks the temperature of the nest. Scientists today still don't have a clue how this bird checks the temperature. They have no idea how he does it. And if it's getting, but he does. And if it's getting too hot, then he'll throw sand on the nest to deflect the sunlight to cool it down. Or if it's too cold, then he'll insulate it with material found in the forest. And he has a number of different ways of making the nest the exact right temperature, and he does this every day. He also keeps the nest, if that wasn't complicated enough, he also keeps the nest at 99.5% humidity. If it gets down to 80% humidity, the chicks will dry out and they'll die. So this bird keeps the nest at exactly 91 degrees Fahrenheit and 99.5% humidity, and yet again, no one knows how he is able to tell that the percent humidity and the temperature is those things within the nest. They have no idea how he does it, but he does it for 7 months. So once these little chicks hatch and the birds are good to go, neither parent feeds or teaches this bird anything. Like once they hatch, they are on their own. Dad doesn't care, mom doesn't care, you are by yourself. And so the first thing that the chick knows what it needs to do is that it obviously has to dig out of this big mound that it's been born in. And so how they know which direction to go is, again, something that they don't know. But as soon as the bird comes out of the egg, it knows which way is up and which way is down. And so what they'll do is they flip themselves onto their backs, and they scrape pieces of the nest on top of themselves. And so they kick with their feet, and they're scraping what's above them. And then the nest, a little bit of the nest falls underneath them, and they take their wings and they pat it down and get it underneath them, and then they scrape more and it falls down. Then they pat that down, and that's literally how they're climbing their way up and out of their nest to get to the surface. And this can take up to 3 days. And so once they get out, they already know exactly what to eat and where to find it. They know exactly where to go. It's like it's built into them. Nobody taught them anything. And the following year, the full-grown male chick will begin to build the nest and start the process all over again for themselves, and yet a daddy and mummy bird never taught them how. They know exactly how to build a nest. They know exactly how to keep the right temperature, the right humidity. They know all of those things by themselves. Nobody ever taught them. And so now if the story of evolution is true, these birds' existence is not possible. And some would even say that the bird's existence today is an absolute miracle. And I just say, how great is our God? Our God is amazing. He designed these birds with this intelligence and with this knowledge built into them. They don't need anyone to teach them because the Lord has taught them. And now they're teaching us that yes, there is a creator, because their existence is impossible if there wasn't one. So we've learned a lot from the mound builder. Next and lastly is the Bombarder Beetle. These guys are weird. They are only a quarter to just over an inch long. And there's no way that this beetle could have evolved. And that's because his defense mechanism is an amazingly complicated system that has working parts that all need to be there at the exact same time, or this beetle would literally blow himself up. They call him the Bombarder Beetle for a good reason. And so he has two twin exhaust pipes in his tail. And this little beetle fires into the face of his enemy boiling hot, noxious gases with this loud pop. And so here's a picture of the beetle actually shooting this noxious gas out that's incredibly hot. And he does this because he mixes two chemicals that are within his body, which is hydrogen peroxide and hydroquinone. And normally those two things mixed together would be just a really dirty and ugly mixture. That would be dangerous inside of its body if they met within his body. But the well-designed beetle uses a special inhibitor chemical to keep the mixture from reacting when it's inside of him. And so it's amazing that this beetle hasn't completely exploded by having these chemicals within him. They only explode like this when they exit his body, which is amazing. So in the beetle's specially designed combustion tubes, there are two enzymes called catalase and peroxidase, which make chemical reactions go millions of times faster. And so it speeds up this process when it's exiting him so that he can have the chemical reaction that he needs to do what he needs to do to keep him safe from the predator that's trying to eat him. And so these chemicals catalyze the extremely rapid decomposition of hydrogen peroxide, turning it into water and oxygen, and the oxidization of hydroquinone into just quinone. And so this causes them to violently react and explode. But of course, not too soon that it would blow the beetle up. And so again, it just has this amazing factory that's built into it that gives it this defense mechanism that doesn't kill it. And so again, just common sense tells us that this amazing little insect cannon, which can fire 4 or 5 bombs in succession, could not have evolved piece by piece. Explosive chemicals, inhibitors, enzymes, glands, combustion tubes, sensory communication, muscles to direct the combustion tubes, and the reflex nervous system all had to work perfectly the very first time this beetle fired, or this little guy would have blown himself away a long, long time ago. And so again, the engineering and the design of this beetle is absolutely impossible if evolution was true. It just isn't. This thing would have been dead a long time ago. And so the Bombarder Beetle is another example of intelligent design that has given this beetle the ability to survive, not just from being eaten by predators, but also to survive the chemical reactions that are required for him to survive being eaten by predators. And so this beetle absolutely defies evolution. So in conclusion, guys, that's all the animals I wanted to go through with you. There's many more, but I'm just gonna wrap this up. And so again, this is the slide I started with. Both sides of this argument, evolutionists and creationists, have the exact same evidence to support their beliefs. But after diving a little deeper into what that evidence actually is, I mean, what do you think? You know, at the very least, we have to conclude that evolution is far from a proven fact. It is far from a proven fact. And so, you know, I've wanted to present to you the evidence that I have found digging into this stuff and go through it with you. Now, of course, I'm biased in the sense that I believe that evolution is completely false. Macroevolution is completely false, and that creationism is the only real explanation for all the evidence that we do have. So I of course am biased towards that because it's what I believe. But if you just look at the evidence for yourself, and you really look back at some of the things that we've gone through, I didn't even touch everything, guys. There's so much more information and evidence out there. It's incredible. But when you look at it from a logical standpoint, and you even just look around you at creation and the stars and our galaxy and our solar system and how we're positioned within it, and the way that the Earth has been designed to support complex life, it is staggering evidence for intelligent design. And so, again, when we just look at all the evidence, I think the only logical answer is intelligence, and that there is a creator. And that's what I believe the evidence is pointing to, but it's up for you to decide for yourself. And so again, we just have to conclude after all of this that macroevolution is not a proven fact. And again, I would just remind you that true science is about what is observational. And this is an area that evolution is seriously lacking in. It is seriously lacking in observational science. There's a lot of theory and there's a lot of assumption. There is almost no observation of this actually taking place. And so by Darwin's own admission, remember guys, that if he were alive today, he himself would not be an evolutionist based on the more recent discoveries that he said we should have never found if evolution was true, and yet we have found, or things that we should have found and never did find. And so Darwin himself, by his own word, would not be an evolutionist today. And I want to just end by showing you how many of the brilliant minds around the world are also in agreement that evolution is a dead religion with no scientific backing. It is only being held onto so tightly by atheists because that there's no other explanation for how the world came to be as we know it. And so evolutionists and atheists are clinging on to evolution because if they let go of evolution, they have to believe in a creator. They have to believe in an intelligent design. Science doesn't have anything else. There's no other explanation for how we got here. And so evolution is the only explanation that gets rid of God and therefore lets them live however they want and believe that they won't be accountable for how they live at the end of their life. And so it's the God escape is what evolution is. But when we look at the science of it, it is incredibly weak. And I want to show you what a number of scientists have said regarding this in conclusion. So Sir Julian Huxley, I think, nailed this on the head, just what I was trying to say. He's one of the world's leading evolutionists, and he was asked in a TV interview, why did the scientific community jump at Darwin's ideas? And he replied, I suppose the reason why we leapt at the origin of species was that the idea of God interfered with our sexual mores, which is the customs and behaviors that are accepted by a people group. So he's saying we leapt at it because we wanted to get rid of God who's trying to tell us what to do. We want to live our lives as we want, and Darwin was our God escape. Darwin helped us get rid of God so that we could do whatever we like and not be accountable. He's not saying that they leapt at it because the science was so strong. They leapt at it because it got rid of God. He's saying it straight up, and Sir Arthur Keith was also a scientist and a strong believer in evolution, and he is quoted as saying that evolution is unproved and unprovable. An evolutionist saying this. It's unproved and unprovable. We believe in it only because the alternative is special creation, and that is unthinkable. These two evolutionists are calling it out. They're not saying that the science is strong. In fact, they're saying it's incredibly weak. It's unproven, unprovable. The only reason they're clinging to it is because special creation, believing that there's a creator, is just unthinkable. There's no way that can be, that just cannot be true. We cannot accept that. Let's jump at Darwin. He's our God escape. And that's exactly what the scientific community at large has done. Again, not because the science is good, but because they don't like the alternative of believing that there is a designer that we're accountable to. Jean Rostand, a French biologist and a member of the Academy of Sciences, said that evolution is a fairy tale for adults. Evolution is a fairy tale for adults. Another professor of biology at the University of Strasbourg said the theory of evolution has helped nothing in the progress of science. It is useless. Guys, these are scientists and professors. These are intelligent people. And some of them are evolutionists, and they're saying that, yeah, it's true. It's just incredibly weak, and it's actually helped nothing in the progress of science. It is useless. It's a fairy tale for adults. And let me just show you another illustration of what I mean and by what this French biologist means when it comes to being a fairy tale for adults. If I were to show you this picture of a princess kissing a frog that we know is going to turn into a prince because we know that that's the fairy tale, you would know just that. This is a fairy tale. Kissing a frog and it turning into a prince, turning into a human, is a fairy tale. It's just not going to happen. And so we automatically know it's a fairy tale. But in evolution, we all of a sudden believe it's not a fairy tale, a frog turning into a prince. And yet, this is exactly what evolutionists believe, that instead of a princess with a magic kiss, the magic kiss isn't coming from a princess, the magic kiss is coming from millions and millions of years. Millions of years is the process that makes this happen, the frog turning into a prince, because the frog is our ancient ancestor. Because we all have a common ancestor in evolution, and so we came from a frog. And so we believe that millions of years is the magic wand that can make the impossible possible. But it doesn't without faith. You have to believe that by faith. It's never been observed except for in fairy tales, which is why evolution is absolutely a fairy tale for adults. Moving on, Paul, who's the director of the National Museum of Natural History, said evolution is a kind of dogma which its own priests no longer believe, but which they uphold for the people. It is necessary to have the courage to state this, if only so that men of the future generation may orient their research into a different direction. So he's calling this out, guys. He goes, hey, in the scientific community, we need courage to call this out for what it is. We need courage because mainstream scientific media and the scientific community is so gung-ho on evolution that you have to call it out for what it is. It takes courage to do that. And for the sake of future generations, we need to begin to orient our research in a different direction because evolution has wasted our time. It is a dead theory that should not be wasting any more of our research because it's just so ridiculous. And this guy, the National Museum of Natural History, is calling it out. Another guy who's got his doctor's degree in physio, he's a physiologist for atomic energy in the USA. He said, scientists who go on teaching that evolution is a fact of life are great con men. And the story they are telling may be the greatest hoax of all time. In explaining evolution, we do not have one iota of fact. One iota of fact. Man, like again, just these are intelligent people that are saying this, guys, and I think we need to listen to them. And here's the last one I wanted to end with. A university professor and philosopher from Waterloo, University of Waterloo in Ontario, said, I myself am convinced that the theory of evolution, especially the extent to which it has been applied, will be one of the great jokes in the history books of the future. Posterity will marvel that so flimsy and dubious a hypothesis could be accepted with the incredible credulity that it has. This person is saying people in the future are going to laugh that we believed evolution for as long as we did. They're going to marvel that so flimsy and ridiculous a theory was held up and believed in for so long. They're going to think we were ridiculous. And they are right to do so because, again, the evidence doesn't point to evolution. The evidence points to creation. And you need way more faith to believe in evolution than you do in creation. And they're simply holding on to this theory because it gets rid of God. They're not holding on to it because it's good science. It's not observational. It's a religion. It requires faith, and they're holding on to it because it gets rid of God. And so anyway, guys, there's so much more, but obviously I've gone 10 videos, and it's enough information to at least get your wheels spinning. It's not exhaustive in any way. I did try to present this in a way that was simple to understand. And I really hope that you got something out of it. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, the more we dig into science, the more we are drawn to the conclusion that there is an incredible creator. And the 21st century is an amazing time frame in which the evidence that we have is screaming creation, more so than in the 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th century. There is so much more evidence now when we understanding the complexity of human life and the galaxies and how we're positioned and DNA and all of this stuff. We are I believe are experiencing to a whole new degree Romans 1:20, that since the creation of the world his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal Godhead and power, so that we are without excuse. I would say more so than ever before in the 21st century, we are without excuse to believe in an incredible, kind, and brilliant creator. Again, when we look at all of creation, I'll just close by saying that you cannot have pottery without a potter. You can't have a song without a composer. You can't have art without an artist. You can't have design without a designer. Everywhere we look, we see all these things and more. And we are absolutely without excuse. And God has put these things out there so that not to condemn, but to show that his fingerprints truly are everywhere. And it is far, far more scientific and logical to believe in intelligent design than anything else. It's what the world and everything we see within it and outside of it is screaming to us each and every day and each and every night. So I hope you guys got something out of this. In the last slide, I'm just going to show you a bunch of resources and references for further insight and information. I strongly encourage you to look up some of this stuff. They'll get into way more depth than I ever did if you want to dig deeper, and you'll find it very, very beneficial. So hope you enjoyed this, guys. God bless, and we'll see you in another series.